Yay! Wednesday, May 2nd. Let's see, we'll go from there. Although you're home, us having best today doesn't do anything for you. We did get our new books that we picked up, so we get a chance to look at them. It looks like this. Book. We'll try to make it as exciting as possible. The Honor Society Kings Island thing is full. We're going to get to a bell work here in a moment. Once again, we have the e-learning assignment where you're going to be creating your own meme to turn it in. You can either print it and turn it in, or you can email it to me. I'm happy either way. And if you do give me a digital copy where you email it to me in one form or another, and I think it's good enough, I'm going to be putting it on my website for kids to look at next year, because I'm going to be creating a meme list for my outsiders. I think it's kind of a fun idea for kids to see next year to help them out. We'll see how it goes. That's my plan. Then, let's see. Also, on my website, I have a new Twttin page. And so on the Twttin page, I have the ebook, so you can download it to read it at home. It's really exciting. And then I also have the audiobook files, which are read by a different person. So hopefully they're slightly more entertaining. And then we're going to get into our conversation for today about making poor choices, which seems to be a theme for a lot of our books. For each one of these, once again, you can hit pause here in a moment if you just want to go through and then do the ready bits or to respond to it. But 1, anyone who uses illegal drugs daily is a bad person. 2, getting revenge will help you feel better about a situation. 3, there are no bad people, there are only bad choices. 4, I would report my best friend who possessed illegal drugs, no matter what the consequences might be. And 5, good always triumphs over evil in stories. By the way, before we get into our book, any guesses as to what our new book is mostly going to be about?
Drugs.
Yay!
Oh,
yeah. And so what this one's going to get into is it follows 2 new characters that are going to be taking place in here. A guy named Brian and then his best friend Mark. The problem is Mark's parents died when Mark was young, so Brian's parents adopted him. So they're sort of like brothers
Author have to
about
do with
parents dying.
Yeah.
Apparently it's like every kid's dream. My parents are dead, yay! And so they're just sort of getting rid of them that way. Kids don't like parents, they're awful creatures. And so that, but one has his mom, at least, they still get to hang out with her. But it follows the idea of drugs, and sort of not that so much the idea of one group beating up another group, but more about the decisions that you make and how they affect your life and stuff like that. So speaking of decisions, number 1, let's see if you agree or disagree with each one. Anyone who uses illegal drugs daily is a bad person. Raise your hand if you agree. Disagree. All right. 2, getting revenge will help you feel better about a situation. Agree. Disagree. Interesting. 3, there are no bad people. There are only bad choices. Agree. Disagree. 4, I would report my best friend who possessed illegal drugs, no matter what the consequences might be. Agree. Disagree. And the last one, good always triumphs over evil in stories. Agree. Disagree. Oh, interesting.
There's a lot of stories where things go badly.
They can go badly. That means in the end, does the good eventually win? I mean,
I've read
you
some.
have to have a struggle, like with the Avengers. You're going to have Thanos who does bad things.
No.
But that's why there's a second movie coming up. And so that's why you have to have like the overall ideas. Hopefully, good
Apparently
always
they can't
wins.
release the
But
title
that's
because
what
it
we'll get
spoils
into
too much.
Without telling about what happens in the book, we're not there yet, but the idea of that decision that you have to make when your best friend, your BFF, that best friend in the absolute world, makes a poor choice and you have to decide, do you go down that same path or do you abandon your friend? That's part of what the book gets into. All right. One of the things the book talks about, that first one about dealing with illegal drugs. With this book, this is one of the books I remember reading when I was in junior high. I think for me, I was in 8th grade when I read it. For me, this is the first book I remember that made me cry, was this one. I read The Outsiders, and I like The Outsiders, but I don't remember crying from it. I remember crying from this one, because I was actually remember being at my grandparents' house, because I was finishing reading it, and I was hanging out there, and I was like sitting there trying to get homework done, and there's a part in the book. It doesn't even have to do with death. Yes, there is a little bit of death in this book, not nearly as much as the other book dealt with, The Outsiders, where it killed a whole bunch of people. Here, there is some death. This one is more the choices that the characters make. It felt a lot more real to me. I like The Outsiders, but it didn't feel as real to me. I'm not really worried when I was a kid about my best friend killing somebody and us going on the run. It was a fun story to read, but that didn't connect to me as a person. This one deals with the idea of your best friend going down a dark place, making poor choices. What do you do? And that hit a lot closer to home, especially for me when I was in 8th grade. I had friends who started doing drugs and going down that path. And so I connected a lot of what I saw there to my actual life. And the scenes, for those of you who have these things called emotions, it might hit a little close to home because of some of the choices that they deal with in there. And it's not from death, it's just from the choices that the characters make. It is a shorter book than The Outsiders is, but it is also a lot more adult book than The Outsiders is, which is why I use this one to finish the year. It's also, this is the book I use to lead into the stories I do the last week of school, because I've mentioned little bits and pieces that I spend the very last week of school as opposed to watching a movie or anything like that. I tell stories about my life, and the stories that formed me and made me who I am. Those stories came about from this book because they connect back to the poor choices that I made and the fact that I did things that I regret that formed me as a person. And so those stories came about because of reading this book and questions kids had and stuff like that, that eventually led to me telling those stories at the end. In order for my stories to make sense at the end, this book has to come first, because it sort of leads into those big things that are going to happen from there. One of those things, the idea that anyone using illegal drugs. Here's one of the things. Right now in 7th grade, if you are unfamiliar with illegal drug use, that is good. Here's the bad news. By this point next year, you won't be. By the time you leave here in 8th grade, you will know someone who is on that path. It's just the way it is, because it is so prevalent. Part of the issue is, I have kids in 7th grade who know kids who are on that path right now, because I know 7th graders who are on that path right now. If you don't, good. Hold on to that like a little puppy. And you hold your little puppy of happiness, and you just sit there and you pet that little guy. Because when you get to 8th grade, that puppy is going to turn into a ferocious wolf, and it's going to jump on top of you. So part of the issue is we have to start getting into these conversations. And that's what this book goes down. Because talking to my 8th graders, by the time you leave, you will know someone who is on that path. Here's the bigger issue. I have a lot of high school kids who come back and talk to me. I leave my door open at the school, and I have a lot of kids who are now freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors in college who come back to speak to me. One of the big questions I ask them is about stuff like this. I would say almost every single one of you, by the time you are a sophomore in high school, so your 2nd year of high school, it'll be a friend of yours that has gone down this path. It'll be someone that you know personally, not just, hey, in 8th grade, I know a kid. There's this kid in my English class, I swear, because I talk to him all the time. It'll be, by the time you're a sophomore, it's going to be a close friend of yours. You are going to have to make this choice. What do you do? Either you're going to choose to go down that path, or your best friend is going to choose to go down that path. And I wish it wasn't that way, but it is, because that's just the way life goes. So, we start that conversation here as we get to the end of 7th grade. Years ago, I used to not have these conversations at all. We used to end with a whole different book and stuff like that. But part of the issue is, the longer I've been teaching, I talk to all my past students when they come in, and I realize the summer between 7th and 8th grade, for a lot of you, is the summer where you get introduced into evil, where you're going to start finding stuff like drugs, smoking, drinking, poor choices. And a lot of your parents still think of you as little kids, which is understandable. I have my own 7th grader. I still think of her as a little kid. The problem is, for a lot of you, that little kid's shell is going to be disappearing. Let me see if this person's here. There's a good chance they're not. Ooh, this person is. All right. That's the I-step one you were waiting for. It's just not till 8:35, so you have time.
Oh, 8:35.
Yeah, so it's not till after second period. All right. So, I've realized that if I want to have an impact on your life and change things, I have to be that impact and change I want to be. So we spend this last month, as opposed to a kid earlier who was shocked the fact that we were reading a new book. He's like, I thought we were just going to stare at each other. No. I use my last month to make my final impact on you. And so I use it to tell you stories about my life, and I use it to talk about the fact of what you have coming up in yours. Because for a lot of you, and some of you, you ain't dumb. You know who your friends are. And you have a suspicion that things are coming soon. And for many of you, you're going to start getting a chance to hang around kids who make those choices this summer. So this book is my last time to have that impact and impression on you. Even more so today, because first question up there, if you're not aware of it, we had a kid who got caught with drugs here at school yesterday, at our school. And so it's becoming a lot more prevalent because it's here. Now, I'm not going through and telling you who it was. It was an 8th grader. If you don't know, sure you can check social media because Piz was posting about it, but it's here. We had a kid with drugs in our building yesterday. And so the fact that it happened the day before we begin this book was incredibly fitting. So that's why I want to get into the conversations. Lockie.
Were they illegal?
Oh yeah, it was marijuana. And so we had a kid who had it here at our school.
Jeez.
And so, I mean, surprise, kids make poor choices. It's going to happen.
Hide that.
Beavis?
How dumb is he?
Why are kids so dumb when they do this type of stuff?
Ooh, not a bad
Well,
question.
because they were taking it.
In all
That was
honesty,
gonna be a great idea.
That's part of what we get into in the book. When you see the path they go down, no one chooses that path because they want to be a bad person. The reason people choose drugs, and my segue to get into this book, drugs hide pain. There's people who are in pain, either because their home life is awful, their social life is awful, there's something that is causing them some kind of emotional pain, they have unhappiness. Drugs take that away. That's why people do drugs.
That's why people get high.
Yeah. The reason why people get high is it makes that unhappiness disappear. The issue is, it's not a healthy way of doing it. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, it makes the pain go away, but it's not the healthy way of making it go away. But there's a lot of people out there who are weak. And I don't mean it as an insult, because there's every chance some of you are going to go down that path because you're weak. And it's just because it's an easy way to fix that pain. And for a lot of kids who have bad home lives or have something that makes them unhappy, they need a way to hide that pain. What you see in the book is one of the reasons why I really like it. The book never comes out and says, you're an idiot if you do drugs. The book says, this character is in a lot of pain, and they're trying to find a way to cover that pain, and they choose this path. And they never once in the book say that it's a bad path. They simply say, it's the path he took, and these are the consequences of it. Because that's how life works. Some of you are going to choose that path, and you're going to go down it. But there are consequences for it. That's why I like this last book. Because that's how it approaches. Because as I see with my 8th graders, because the kid who made the poor choice was one of my kids last year. He sat through my talks last year. He listened to all of my stories last year. For some kids, it has an impact, and you carry it with you. For other kids, not so much. But I, as a human, can only do so much to try and help you. So that's like with the first one up there. It deals with it. The second one, that getting revenge will help you feel better about a situation, plays a big role in the book, but also a big role in life. Because that's what I see a lot of people doing is when someone makes you mad, whether it's social media or whether it's real world wise, is finding a way to get revenge on that person. A big part of this book is the idea of what happens when you try to get revenge on people and whether or not it solves and makes things better. And in all honesty, revenge does make you feel better. That's why people do revenge, because it sort of kicks off little neurons. You're like, ooh, your pain makes me feel happy. But is that a good thing? Don't you walk in front of that camera. I wouldn't let you. What you're going to do is cup your hands so you can hold on to your beat points. And you're going to just throw them over your... No, you're not splashing the beat points on your face. You're throwing them away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Just like when the car's going down the road. Don't step in front of that car. What are you talking about? I hope he died. You got hit by a car. You tell him not to. Yeah, he stared right in my eyes when he walked right in front of it. We'll miss him.
Sounds like me, yeah.
We make choices. At least we're not recording to watch it. No, that's awkward. And so the idea of revenge plays a big part of life when the teacher attacks you in class and you try to stab him after school. It'll make you feel good in the moment, but the long-term effects just aren't worth it. Number 3. I want to see your hands on that one again. Because I changed that one from last year. This is the first year I've done that as an option because of arguments I got into with kids last year. There are no bad people. There are only bad choices. How many of you agree on that one?
Is there like an in-between?
How many of you disagree? All right. So then, to change it a little bit, What if I were to say there are most definitely bad people in the world?
Yeah.
Agree?
Yeah.
Disagree? Alright. Because as the idea, like with the outsiders, Bob, now that we get to the end and you find out that Bob had a bad home life. He had parents that basically just gave him everything he wanted, never got disciplined. Everything Bob did was just to try and make his parents finally show love for him. And that's why Bob did the things he did all the times. But by a show of hands, is Bob a bad person? How many of you guys say Bob is down deep, probably a good person?
Yeah.
At least say Bob is not an awful person. How about Dally? Raise your hand if you say, I think Dally was a good person. Raise your hand if you say Dally was a bad person.
He's just a good person in a bad situation.
And that's what we're going to get into. And one of the reasons why I really like the book we're getting into here, unlike with The Outsiders, where you have a lot, you're like, Ponyboy, straight up good person. Like, I mean, he smokes cigarettes, but overall, he's a fairly good person. The main characters in this book, they're not so good people, but they make bad choices. And a lot of it is the idea that you can make a bad choice and not be a bad person. I think that's a big thing to hit in 7th grade, going into 8th grade. It's okay to make a bad choice. That doesn't ruin you as a person. You can make a bad choice and not be a bad person. And I think too many people put those things together, that as soon as you make bad choices, you're automatically a bad person. And I don't think that's the way things work. Yes.
See, Dally, he still had hope and still liked somebody, so there's still that sliver of happiness down deep, but he was just in a bad situation because he didn't have the right type of home life and didn't come from the right places.
Home life at all. But at the beginning of the story, if I'd asked you that, most of when we got to the part about him beating up small children and stuff like that,
Yeah,
if I would have said, is
that's
Dally a
extremely
good person?
wrong.
Like, no, he's evil. He's like a little Hitler. No one likes him. But it's when you find out more. Here's the problem that we're going to use for the book into real life. That applies to everybody. Even those kids in class you don't like, that's only because you're beginning of the book Dally to them. You've not found out end of book Dally about them. There's something in their life causing that. And that's probably what we're going to get to as we get to the end of the year. You have to realize that even that kid you don't like who makes you upset because they're a horrible bully, that's beginning of the book Dally. End of the book Dally, there's more to them. Lockie.
Well, I mean, there is a bad people in there.
Okay, how so?
Because, like, people... Like, I was on the news yesterday,
Mhm.
and then, like, at this daycare, this 1-year-old...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like, this girl, like, this daycare girl, like, beat up a 1-year-old.
Now with
And
that,
he was in a neck brace, and his nose was, like, bro, like, who beats up a 1-year-old?
beginning of the book Dally.
No, I don't care, though. She's a terrible person.
But it's
I don't
That's
care.
awful.
That's-
She's not a bad person.
What?
She
You
just
don't
makes
beat up
you
That
people.
is, that's a horrible.
Why we have opinions, that's
That's
I know,
You're
everybody thinks
insulting
someone
and
beats up
showing
one-
that back.
Hold on, hold on. Are you saying that
That's
Elwood's a
what
good
I'm
person?
saying.
Hang on.
Oh, he kills many Jews.
Punches a newborn.
Lockie.
Alright, so that's like when like a 30-year-old, if he like beat up like a 10-year-old, like he's